it has to do with body weight. So like if I'm leaning to the right to my throwing side while I'm throwing the ball, I'm increasing the weight that I have on my back foot. And the
Hmm.
throw is a turn, not a push. So
Right.
as I'm leaning right and turning through that back
Yeah.
foot, everybody that's listening could do it right now. You'll feel your foot chew the ground up a little bit.
Right.
And that in
Yeah.
and of itself is ground force. That's
I love
taking
that.
power from the ground. Whereas Trey has been so high forever,
Yep.
and you can see it in everything that he does. So
Mm,
he's so light that
yep.
there's nothing happening in the ground. And he's
Interesting.
starting to get a little bit of that. Like that's what's
Interesting.
starting to change. But before, 150% arm based thrower all the time. And
Super
then
interesting.
he admitted it in his interview the other day where he was like, and I was throwing because he was trying to get a better feel for it, not
Yeah.
understanding like you have to work smarter, bud, not harder. Like this
Absolutely.
is about finding the right people to put you in the place to understand yourself. And that's the process that he has begun. Although, unlike a lot of the guys that were commenting on your stuff yesterday, he's very
It's
far
not.
from there.
I led him astray saying he fixed it. What you're I played baseball growing up, and what you're
Yeah,
describing, that leaning right and getting all your weight on that right leg, is almost like a shortstop who's fielding a bunt, or a third baseman, and
exactly.
you're like, I mean, it's that kind of emotion, and you can see it with quarterbacks as well. So that's very interesting.
100%. one hundred
All right, let
percent,
me
man.
ask
It's
you
a,
straight up:
yeah.
what are you seeing with Trey Lance? What does he? What does he do? I'm gonna say wrong, but suboptimally. You mentioned it a
Mhm.
second ago, being too high up, not having anything going on in the ground. Explain that again.
Well, at its foundation, Trey Lance doesn't trust himself
Okay.
to throw a one ball, two ball, and three ball anywhere on the field. Okay. A one ball, two ball, three ball is just the pace of the football.
Got it.
So your average throwers in the NFL are going to throw all one balls. It's going to be
Okay.
as hard as they can throw it
Okay.
because they have to throw it hard as shit to be able to control the ball down the field. Your
That was
best
Trey the first
throwers,
2 years of his career. That was Trey.
100%.
Yep.
100%. Your best throwers of the football are what I call artists, where
Yeah.
you're watching them change the speed
Mahomes.
and angle of every single ball that they throw.
Mahomes.
Mahomes is up in that
I
category.
say he looks like
Rodgers
he's
is,
throwing a pillow. Like, it is so soft sometimes. It's
right? Right?
pillowy.
No.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And so, in a lot of ways, what I tell people to look at is don't look at how the guy throws a bang post or how he
Hmm.
throws a dig. Look at how he throws a drag. Trey
Okay.
Lance will throw a drag like this,
Mm, yeah, you can't do
right?
that.
Aaron
Yeah.
Rodgers will throw a drag like that,
Yep. Just
right?
wrist. Just wrist.
Which,
Yeah. Yeah.
hey, you said it, not
Yeah.
me. Now you're spitting
Yeah.
bars, dude.
That's right,
Wrist,
baby.
right? Trey
Yep.
Lance has no
Mm,
wrist. He has
let me
no
see.
feel for his wrist. Everything
Hmm.
is power.
Right.
And it's because that power is being generated from his upper half. Is he
Correct.
using his hips a little bit? Yeah, but there's not strong connection through the ground in his back leg. So you're just looking at a guy who's having to do way more than a lot of the other guys have to do. And I
Yeah.
always look at it through that mental approach where if I'm having to do way more to yield the same result, I don't feel the same way internally.
Right. Right.
And that's really what I tap into that I see as different. Is like, is Dak Prescott a good quarterback? That would be my player composition for Trey Lance. Like, let's say that Trey is really dialed mentally, which like I don't know that. I don't know
Hmm.
enough to know, but he seems like a great kid. Like if he's dialed like that mentally, then he's Dak Prescott. Like Dak, you guys all saw it, Niners fans. You saw that fucking look in that guy's eyes in the second
Hmm.
half during that game last year. That's a guy who does not trust himself to be
Mm,
able to put the ball where he needs to put it. The
mm.
beauty is you guys are the fucking 49ers and you have the best head coach in the NFL. So
Yeah.
the real question is, does Trey Lance have to be able to do that
Right.
to win a Super Bowl? That's the
Mm.
other question.
To win a
But
Super
for
Bowl,
everybody that,
probably,
yeah,
but to get to the NFC Championship game and lose like everyone else, maybe not.
right. Well, we've
Okay,
done that.
so
We've done that
so
enough.
he's an arm throw. One thing I noticed on film from him last year, and it's maybe a symptom of an issue, but that front leg lock, it seemed like, I mean, the way I always, as a baseball player, I was always taught you throw bent leg to bent leg, and you lock that leg after you release the ball as sort of a way to slow your own momentum. But again,
Totally.
like if you're locking your leg when the ball is behind your ear, it seems like again, then you're just powering your arm through the throwing zone, and it's going to lead to arm fatigue. And it seemed like one thing he needed to fix. I don't know. Is that an issue to you?
I mean, it's definitely an issue because what that means is like, so he's overstriding, right?
Yes.
Which what Tom Brady changed from the New England Patriots to the Buccaneers was he stopped creating any linear momentum. So he
Right.
stopped striding forward, Well, when we stride
Yeah.
forward, that naturally creates our weight leaves our back hip. So now we
Yeah.
have to push,
Right.
right? And if we're pushing, that's the opposite of a catapult. Like
Mhm.
quarterback mechanics are a catapult. It's
Okay.
all rotation, but there's a
Ah,
stop and the
okay.
ball goes. So
Yep.
the best throwers of the football will release the ball here,
Yep.
even with their body.
Ah,
What
okay.
you see in that still shot that I think you took a screenshot
Out in
of
front.
Trey is
Out in
he's
front.
still finishing up here.
Ah,
So
very
he's
interesting.
starting to incorporate his lower body. He's
Got it.
definitely striding less than he has
Got it.
before. He's rotating more than he has before, but he is not to the place of trust yet.
That's
Like
so
when you
interesting.
watch those drills, like you'll see, I'm not saying Darnold is Aaron Rodgers, but you'll see how Darnold does trust himself more in that extension at release from the side, like timing this up
I would
properly.
agree with that. I would
Whereas
totally
Trey
agree with that. Yep.
here, yeah,
Now the thing with Darnold is everything looks good, and then you watch the ball and it's like behind the right. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. We're talking about Lance. That's very
yeah,
interesting. I totally see what you mean. And the thing is, so he's going to Jeff Christensen to correct this.
yeah,
Um, Jeff Christensen was Jimmy Garoppolo's coach for a long time. That's so
totally.
interesting to me. I always noticed that Jimmy didn't really have a weight transfer, and to me, it was like, yeah, it's great, but like you have nothing on your throws. Trey theoretically is a better athlete. He should be able to get more hip torque and get more velocity without working so hard. Theoretically.
Theoretically, for sure. And
Theoretically.
like,
Yeah.
and Jeff's a very good coach and he's
Okay.
applying the same process. But the thing is, like, also within the mental and physical limitations that an athlete has, when you look at Patrick Mahomes, like, he's Gumby, right? So, like, his external rotation and his shoulder mobility and the things he's able to do with his arm, like, those are things that a quarterback coach doesn't train. You
Yep.
know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
so Trey's getting the training that he needs. That's an elite trainer. Like, it's a
Yep.
very, very good trainer. Now, is Trey also marrying up? And he said that he talked to Mahomes a little bit and stuff like that. But is he also marrying up that training with the freeing of those things that have held him back? Because he's been a push and a tight base thrower forever. He's been a power based thrower
Mm-hmm.
forever. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about Mahomes, we're talking about art. Like,
Yeah.
Jimmy has been a little bit more tightly wound, like a
Yeah.
little bit more tightly wound than a Mahomes would be. So
Mm-hmm.
Trey is trending towards more of that Jimmy Garoppolo feel. Now the question is, like, does he go to that extra extent to really lengthen his muscles up in his shoulder and his lat? Because pliability is the secret, right? All your best throwers of the football across the world in the NFL, the top seven, because the top seven look
Yeah.
different than the other guys. So when you
Yeah.
look at those top seven, who's buff? None of them. None of them.
True.
Who
That's
looks
so
good
true.
up top? None of them. Like,
That's so
they
true.
all, it's long spaghetti noodles, dude. It's
Yep.
spaghetti noodles. And that's what it is. And they work
Because again,
hard
you're
at
not
that.
providing power with your arm. It's not your arm.
It's the
It's
lever.
not.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's the lever.
That's so interesting.
That's it.
I remember the first time I saw Trey Lance throw, I was so impressed. Like, man, this, because I've been watching Jimmy for like 5 years. And I get, as you see Trey, I'm like, man, this dude throws hard. And so it was really cool. And then they did a joint practice with the Chargers. And I'm watching Justin Herbert throw. And I'm like, you know what? He throws harder than Trey, but he's not even trying. Like, he's just, it's just effortless. And I'm like, okay, that's a natural thrower. Like, Trey is so effortful, or was. And I thought yesterday, at least one thing that was nice was that he wasn't throwing his hardest. And during 7-on-7s, Kyle was just calling, like, throwing the flat to the right, throwing the flat to the left, like over and over and over again. It was like, prove that you can hit these layups, which I think is probably good for him.
Yeah, I think it's definitely good for him. And I think the very interesting thing for you guys to talk about and think about is, like, what Trey's running into that's going to be really hard is he's willing to make the changes, but he's also at a stage of his career in year 3 where there's pressure too. And the reality is, like, Mahomes, Rodgers, they had that time.
Right.
And, like,
Rodgers had 3 years.
Yeah. Does Trey feel like he has time, or does he feel like he needs to figure it out now? Because that's the really catch-22 part of this, where it's like, you can make improvements to your mechanics, but if you're making those improvements because you're saying, I have to improve now, you're not going to get to where you want to go mechanically. If it is the long-term, I don't care what I look like today, I care what I look like 2 and 3 years from now, because I want to be in this league for 15 years, then he's going to get a lot closer to that. That's what's going to be interesting for me to watch as we watch more of him.
Well, I mean, there's no guarantee he starts this year. There's no guarantee he plays this year. I mean, the way the Niners are talking, Brock Purdy's going to be back and he'll be just fine. In which case, Trey might get another redshirt year. To what's really interesting to me is that he went to 3D QB. I don't know how much you know about them, but it's like
Yeah, I
Tom
do.
House's
Yeah.
crew.
Yep.
And so he
Yep.
went there for 2 years and I guess didn't get the results he was looking for. Now he's working with Jeff Christensen. Like, do they teach different things? Like, oh, what? How did that take so long? Like, what's going on?
Conviction and
Conviction.
process allows you to teach extremes, and you teach extremes confidently, and the player trusts you to go there. Okay. So without that complete conviction, you don't want to fuck something up.
Yeah.
You're worried about fucking something up. So
Overhauling
what
it
I
and not fixing it. Yeah, all that.
so what I
Just,
believe
yeah.
was that 3D QB, like they do good work, but they were like, he's already there. I don't want to put too much on him because if I put
Mm.
too much on him, he might regress. Whereas Jeff is a version of like, bro, you suck right now. Like
Yeah.
we need to
What are
fucking
you
get
going to do?
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I would tell him, I can fucking outthrow you right now, Trey. So that's a problem. Like, let's fucking figure this out, you know?
Yeah.
And like the level of willingness to be extreme as a coach with an athlete of that caliber, I think is extremely important. And Jeff is definitely a lot more extreme than what he's had in the past.
One thing Jeff mentioned that I thought was interesting is he was like, I could teach whatever, I could say whatever, but having Mahomes sort of model and model what the techniques I'm trying to show you was like a
Yeah.
proof of concept for Trey. Like if you had any skepticism, just watch the best quarterback in the world do it correctly the way I'm saying. And it seemed like from Christensen's perspective, that got some buy-in for Trey. I mean, how could you not? How could you push back when you see Patrick Mahomes doing it that way?
The only problem, like I agree with that, but the only problem with that is like that ignores like the role that Bob Stroop has in Patrick Mahomes' development. Is
Hmm.
like the way that Patrick is constructed as an athlete and the things like this guy can hold a tray, like literally he can almost
Yep.
touch his ass with the back of his hand.
That's
You know what I
wild.
mean?
Yeah.
Like Trey could probably only go back to here.
Ah.
So like when we talk
Yep.
about the ability to get around the football, it's like
Right.
that's external rotation. And so
Yeah.
I'm with it. Like, yes, that's gonna click. Visual learners, this generation especially, like Trey's gonna watch Patrick and be like, fuck yeah,
Okay.
all right, I'm gonna do that on the next rep. But it's like, what if I can't do
Yeah.
everything?
What if I just aren't as pliable?
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And
Really
that's why this is so multifaceted, right? Like for us fans and for us people, like we like to lump it in a bucket and be like, no, 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 just go into the lab and you'll get it right. Like you'll be fine. It's like, no, bro, you have to break processes. You have to break
yeah.
habits. You have to completely retrain and open up a different part of who you are. Because what got you to the NFL is you throwing fucking missiles
Yes.
from under center and dropping
Yes.
back and hitching and allowing all of that forward momentum.
That's what everyone.
Created.
That's what everyone went goo over at his pro day, right? Sorry to cut you off, but
100%. No,
but like
good.
you're right about it. It's that forward momentum to that over the top delivery. It's like old school coaches, the Shanahans love that stuff, right?
Right.
Not
Right.
taking. I like Kyle and Mike. I don't know Mike, but yeah, I mean, it's so interesting that Kyle in particular, drafted this guy. It was pretty obvious. I mean, I think as a quarterback guru, you could see it in North Dakota. Like, okay, this is what he needs to work on. You've been calling him a arm-based, power-based thrower forever. Like, man, there should have been a better plan. There should have been results quicker. It just feels like, to your point, like all of a sudden they're up against the clock. It's crazy.
Well, I'm on the record, dude, with Chris Rose in an interview where I said, like, me personally, and your guys will all go crazy right now, but like me personally, I thought that they made the trade up in the draft to take Mac Jones. Like
Okay.
that's what I thought because Mac was ready to win a championship, in my opinion, based on what Kyle needed. Look at him through like the lens of Matt Ryan, like when he had Matt Ryan with the Falcons.
Okay.
I thought that that's what would happen. But then after they made that move, there was a lot of pressure and intensity and shit that went into why would they make that move. And then Trey performed really, really well a couple times. And Trey has like that. He has a little bit of that it shit to him too. He has a little bit of
that Mac definitely lacks.
That he doesn't have.
For sure.
I think that they kind of went with a completely different philosophy than what I think they were originally kind of intending to do. And then Trey got there and like yes, he had the it shit, but that's the mental side. He
Yeah.
didn't have the physical side. And when you talk about flow or artistry as a quarterback, it's the integration of those two things.
Right.
So you
But at the
can't
same
have
time, I'm
one
saying
without
like,
the other.
how did you look at him in North Dakota and then bring him in and be like, oh shucks, he doesn't have like, and we don't have a plan for it. Like, I don't think, you know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't fly for me. Like you're supposed to be the expert. You're Kyle Shanahan. You got Mike Shanahan to look at it too. You're supposed to see this and have a plan. Because he was supposed to be a project. I was looking at your tweets. You were saying like, yeah, he needs to sit a year because he needs to change these things, like all of that. And now year 3, we're saying, oh wow, he's getting results. And he's like, well, it's because my finger was broken. Whatever. I don't know. It just feels like all these fixes are going to go into, are going to help benefit the next team, which from a Niner fan's perspective is rough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. Anyway, so if you had to say, knowing what Jeff Christensen is trying to do with him, how much progress do you feel Trey Lance has made, and where do you feel the progress is most noticeable?
Yeah, I think he's gotten halfway there. I mean, where it's the most noticeable is like he's actually using power from his lower body. So he's taken the scale of 90% upper body and 10% lower body is now getting closer to like 50-50. Like that scale though needs to be 80-20.
Wow.
It needs to get there. And so what he'll do is he'll just continue to establish more trust in what he's feeling. And it'll allow you to see his weight stay back more. So like when you guys watch the clips from practice yesterday, notice his hip releases forward before it starts turning.
You want a rotation.
The best in the world, all their weight is over that back hip and the rotation starts there.
Okay.
As
Burrow,
opposed to
Rodgers.
leaking
100%.
Yep. Burrow, Rodgers. Yeah, the guy.
Because once you start leaking again, you're not getting power from your hips, right?
Correct. You're getting some. You're not getting that as much power.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
And like so throwing
percentages. So as those percentages flip flop, and he becomes more of a ground based thrower, like so too will then the arrogance in the upper body. Yeah. The arrogance in the upper body, he'll start to be like, fuck it, I got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right now, he doesn't have any of that. Fuck it, I got it. And that's why I said, like, when you compare him and Darnold ain't in that top class of throwers, but Darnold has a little bit more fuck it in him than Trey.
Yes. There was a viral clip of Trey from practice a couple of years ago where he's like rolling left and he kind of has like a fuck it moment where he throws the ball against his body.
Exactly.
But he's not set. He's not set. He's being an athlete in that moment.
Totally. And that's when Justin Fields is at his best as well. Like it's always when you get them out of mind, when you take them off schedule,
out of that training.
Then they trust what they are and they make shit happen. Like
they're like, oh yeah, I'm a great athlete. It's easy. It's not that hard. Yeah. Yep.
Well, and that's where the game has changed. When Nick Saban says like Bryce Young is the best quarterback I've ever had because he's a point guard distributor of the football. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like he's literally a point guard. Like that's how he's playing the position. He's not playing the position. And like right now, Trey's skill set last year for sure, and the year before that was built for that. He's making that transition. But as I said, he's probably 50% of the way there, and he can continue to go. He's going to continue to go. But as you get closer to getting there, it also becomes harder and harder.
Yep.
Like as you get into the little 1%.
Those final 10%. Okay, fair enough.
Exactly.
You mentioned Sam Darnold. So Sam Darnold, just from a throwing mechanic perspective, is more visually pleasing. I don't know how you put it.
More visually pleasing. It's more sound. It's more connected, and he trusts himself more. Like it's more connected, and he has power coming from more of the right places.
Got it.
And so because of that, he's able to play more freely mentally. And that's why like he's fascinating because I'm not in an NFL locker room, so I don't really have the understanding or aptitude to tell you whether he's smart or not, or what his decision making.
A leader.
He's been turnover prone and all of that shit. But he's also a great guy and stuff too. So, but as a thrower, like I would just say it this way, like that's not the thing that's holding Sam Darnold back is throwing. Like he's not one of the top 10 in the league, but it's not a liability. And like, so whatever else is a liability in his game, like that they would know, not me, is what you see when he throws interceptions that don't make sense and shit like that, you know?
Yeah, which Niner fans are familiar with the Jimmy Garoppolo experience. Brock Purdy, what do you see from him mechanically?
I mean, mechanically, he's good. But the thing is, when you have such will to win and
Yeah,
such confidence in yourself,
which he
like
has.
that's when we can start to kind of say that some of these things are less relevant.
Right.
Like his mechanics are never, they're not even close to Aaron Rodgers and Mahomes and these guys.
Yeah.
But Brock gets the fucking job done. And
Yeah.
so when you watch how he plays, again, it's result oriented. There's a lot of Tom Brady there where it's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't look art, it doesn't look beautiful at all. But he knows his role on the team, he knows who he is. He also was afforded the luxury of what expectations were there on him. You know what I mean? Like he didn't have any of that. So he's playing free from mind. Like that's what I talk about with flow state and all the shit that I teach is like when you're 2 + 2 is 4, you didn't add that up. You knew that. That's your subconscious brain. That's your reactionary brain. 12 times 64, you're going to have to pull out a piece of pen and paper, right? That's your processing brain. Most quarterbacks in the NFL are playing through the lens of their processing brain. You can see the best play through their reactionary brain. Brock is not one of the best physically, but because of where he is mentally in terms of understanding his job, his role, all of that, he's able to enter into that kind of flow state area because he's not worried about whether he can get it done. He's worried about whether his team will fucking win or not. And that takes you outside of your head. And it allows some of these things that we're psychoanalyzing with Trey Lance, he doesn't have to worry about them as much. But he couldn't go to the Kansas City Chiefs and fucking win a Super Bowl. No chance. You know what I mean?
No, the only team that he might win a Super Bowl maybe is this team.
Exactly.
And even on this team, it's like he didn't get it done last year. We'll see.
Exactly.
Yeah, but he is quite remarkable for a kid that young with no experience to be able to do that and have that much experience, that much confidence. That's really sets him apart from Sam and I guess Trey too.
Expectation's a crazy thing, man. In today's world with this generation of athlete, like expectation is a fucking heavy weight that people carry. And like Brock didn't have that, you know, in and of itself.
Sam and Trey did. Sam and Trey did big time. And Trey said yesterday he's been talking to a sports psychologist. I can imagine Sam was too. Nothing wrong with that. My wife's a therapist. I mean, it's probably all these players should, but I'm thinking Brock Purdy, he's been through a serious injury, but he hasn't really lost.
Yeah.
He's so confident at this point, probably, although we'll see how he feels about it.